Wow, Mom, you're so generous. To be able to eat such delicious food for free. It feels like a dream. That's my mom. Thanks for treating us again.
Ignoring Kathy's shameless words, Robert continued.
This time, my parents are coming too. When I mentioned we're going to a fancy French restaurant, they said they wanted to come along. It's filial piety, so it's no big deal, right? You've also benefited from them, after all.
Their brazen attitudes were infuriating. Today was supposed to be our wedding anniversary. Don't couples usually celebrate such days alone? And now I'm expected to pay for everyone? It's simply too selfish. I've endured it until now, but I can't tolerate their behavior any longer. So, I decided to take action. My name is Cora Smith, a housewife in my 60s. I live with my husband Robert. Our eldest son, Tom, has already moved out and started his own family. But since he lives nearby, we frequently interact with them. One day, Kathy, Tom's wife, came over. Tom was away on a long business trip, leaving Kathy alone at home.
Isn't it unreasonable? Despite me being here, Tom left for work without a second thought. He's on a long business trip and doesn't even know when he'll be back. Normally, wouldn't someone refuse such a thing?
Kathy was drinking alcohol from our home during the middle of the day while complaining. I can understand that it might feel lonely being left at home, but Tom is working to support their life together. It's only natural that he has to be away for work. Yet Kathy continued her childish complaints.
Wouldn't you be worried if father-in-law was away for a long time? And if he didn't know when he'd be back, wouldn't you start suspecting him of having an affair? I'm sure Tom is cheating on me. There's no other explanation.
Kathy's words were so absurd and baseless. Sure, I understand feeling anxious when someone is away, but Tom is working hard. Accusing him of cheating is just a little too unfair. Tom is doing his best. Please don't say such things about him. I couldn't keep silent anymore and tried to gently diffuse the situation. I worried that if this misunderstanding deepened, it might strain their marriage. But my attempt didn't go over well.
So you're taking the side of the cheater too, Mom? Of course, I'm just the daughter-in-law, and your own son is more important to you. Even though you said we're family and should get along, it was all a lie, wasn't it?
Kathy began speaking in a pessimistic tone. Naturally, I truly considered her as family and had no ill intentions, but she refused to see it that way. Don't be so negative. Despite my words, Kathy continued her fake crying and didn't hear what I said. This wasn't the first time she had acted this way, always playing the victim, blaming everyone else. While I didn't dislike Kathy, I struggled with how to deal with these behaviors. And it wasn't just Kathy causing me stress. My husband, Robert, who had been sleeping in our room, came downstairs after noticing Kathy's presence.
Kathy's crying. Cora, what did you do to her? Don't tell me you've been bullying her. Just because you're the mother-in-law doesn't mean you can act superior.
No, it's not like that. Kathy suddenly started crying. Not knowing the situation, Robert accused me without understanding. and Kathy immediately clung to his arm.
Mom bullied me. I was just expressing my worries about Tom, and she responded with harsh words, making it sound like I wasn't trying hard enough. Please, Father, say something to her.
Kathy, stop making false accusations. That wasn't my intention. I panicked as Kathy reported a lie to Robert, but this only made him angrier.
Bullying the daughter-in-law is despicable. Apologize to Kathy right now. You've hurt her deeply with your words.
Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, they ganged up on me, and their cold stares were unbearable. Why am I the only one being blamed for everything? I was just trying to protect Tom from Kathy's baseless accusations. Though I was far from satisfied with the situation, I was too afraid of further conflict with Kathy and Robert. I apologized. I'm really sorry. I'll be more careful from now on, so please forgive me. Kathy smirked in satisfaction.
You should have just bowed down like this from the start. You're my punching bag after all.
Kathy and Robert snickered at me. Feeling overwhelmed, I said I needed to rest in my room and quickly left the scene. Kathy and Robert have treated me horribly many times before. They always make me the bad guy, trying to humiliate me and crush my pride. Over time, I became emotionally drained and stopped resisting. I even began to silently agree with Kathy's absurd accusations. I was disgusted with myself for allowing it. Then, our wedding anniversary arrived. Every year, I foot the bill for a luxurious meal, and this year I had booked a fancy French restaurant. Dressing up more nicely than usual, Robert and I headed to the restaurant. As we approached the entrance, I spotted a familiar figure, Kathy. Kathy? What are you doing here? We didn't plan to meet today, right? I had a bad feeling, but I forced a smile and asked. I hoped my fears were unfounded, but Kathy dashed those hopes.
Wow, mother-in-law, you're so generous. To be able to eat such delicious food for free feels like a dream. You're treating us again, right? Oh, and I didn't bring my wallet.
Kathy entered the restaurant with a brazen attitude. As if on cue, Robert chimed in.
My parents are coming too. When I mentioned we're going to a fancy French restaurant, they said they wanted to come. It's filial piety, so it's no big deal, right?
I felt dizzy from the audacity of their words. Yet, Kathy and Robert entered the restaurant, happily chatting with Robert's parents, who were already seated. I had reached my limit. I had ignored their selfish behavior for too long, but if I let it continue, I would lose myself. I think it's time to cut them off. And if I'm going to do it, it has to be decisive and thorough. With this determination, I followed them into the restaurant. I was seated by the waiter and saw Kathy, Robert, and his parents deep in conversation.
You're late. Sit down already. It's on you, right? After all, it's our wedding anniversary.
You're so generous, Mom, treating us to such fancy food. I'm so lucky.
They acted as if it was natural for me to pay for everyone. In the past, I would have tried to appease them. But now, I couldn't care less. Go ahead, eat as much as you want. This is the last time. After today, things will be different. Robert and Kathy, confused, replied in unison.
Ha!
It seemed they didn't quite understand what I meant, so I explained it again. I'm saying this is the last time. After today, I won't do anything for either of you. I've decided to get a divorce and cut ties with your family. I can't put up with this any longer. Robert and Kathy were both stunned, as if they couldn't process my words. Their expressions went blank, and they sat in silence. What's wrong? Surprised? I'm serious. After today, I won't spend another penny on either of you, and I'm filing for divorce. I've tolerated this selfishness long enough, but now it's over. I had endured years of being walked over and taken advantage of. No matter how rude or inconsiderate they were, I always made excuses for them in my mind. But now, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to protect myself before they completely drained me of my sanity.
Cora, are you serious? You're not, right? There's no way you, of all people, could survive on your own.
Robert's voice trembled as he spoke. Of course, I was serious. It was clear from his voice that he was hoping I wasn't. His eyes were full of desperation, pleading for my words to be just a cruel joke. But Kathy, still full of arrogance, laughed it off.
She's joking, obviously. There's no way someone like Mom could survive on her own. This is just her awkward attempt at humor. Honestly, she's not very good at it. Besides, today's meal is on her, no doubt about that, so she'd better prepare to pay.
Kathy's condescending attitude showed she still didn't take me seriously. To her, I was just a pushover, someone who would never defy her, someone she could treat like a doormat without any consequences. She couldn't fathom that I had finally had enough. They really think so little of me, don't they? It's time they learned the truth. I decided to drive my point home. Sorry, Kathy, but this isn't a joke. This is the last time I'll ever pay for anything for you or Robert. And yes, I'm serious about the divorce. From now on, you'll have to manage without me. I won't be doing anything for either of you anymore. I made sure to say it clearly so there could be no misunderstanding. Kathy and Robert stared at me, their mouths hanging open in shock. What's wrong? Did I surprise you? It's simple. I've reached my limit with the way you've treated me. So, after today, we're done. I won't be a part of this family anymore. As I reiterated my decision, I could see realization slowly dawning on them. Robert, suddenly looking worried, tried to salvage the situation.
Wait, hold on. Don't you think you're being too hasty? We've always gotten along fine, haven't we? Is it because I brought my parents today? Surely that's not enough reason to throw everything away, right?
It's not about your parents, Robert. I don't have anything against them. It's you and Kathy I have a problem with. I've put up with your selfishness, your insults, and your mistreatment for years. You've belittled me, made me beg, and laughed at my expense. And now, you expect me to pay for this dinner like I always do, while you act as if it's your right. Well, I'm done. I don't have that kind of patience anymore.
But
Robert was visibly shaken. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. For years, he had treated me like I was nothing, expecting me to endure his arrogance. Now, seeing him crumble under the weight of his own actions, I couldn't help but let out a small laugh. This is all because of how you treated me, Robert. If you had respected me and treated me with care, this wouldn't be happening. I tried my best to be a good wife and support you, but you never appreciated me. That's why we're here now. Because of you. It was clear that Robert was finally starting to understand the consequences of his actions. His face went pale, and he collapsed into his chair, utterly defeated. Watching him like this, I couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. The man who had spent years treating me as inferior, now sitting there, helpless and pitiful. The tables had turned, and he didn't know how to handle it.
Cora, please, I'm begging you. Forgive me. I never meant for it to get this far. I just thought you'd always be there to forgive me, no matter what. I'm sorry. Please, let's start over. I'll change, I promise.
Robert, always so proud and full of himself, was now on his knees, begging for forgiveness. It was a sight I never thought I'd see. But even so, my heart had long since grown cold toward him. I had no love left for him, no desire to continue being his wife. His desperate pleas couldn't change that. I'm sorry, Robert, but it's too late for that. I can't start over with you. You'll have to accept that this is the end. With Robert subdued, I turned my attention to Kathy. She had been quietly watching the exchange, but now, seeing the severity of the situation, panic started to set in. I glanced over and saw Kathy, trembling with fear, frantically gathering her things, as if she was preparing to flee the restaurant. The sight of her so terrified was almost amusing. Kathy, where do you think you're going? Surely you're not planning to run away, are you? I smiled sweetly at her, and she jumped in shock, her voice trembling.
Mom? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to push you this far. Please, forgive me.
Her earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by sheer terror. Kathy, who had always looked down on me, was now pleading for forgiveness. It was a satisfying sight. But I wasn't about to let her off the hook so easily. Kathy had done too much harm, not just to me but to Tom as well. She had caused too much damage to our family for a simple apology to suffice. Apologizing quickly, huh? I'll give you credit for that. But I'm not the kind of person who forgives so easily.
No, please. I'm really sorry. I swear I'll change. I won't do anything bad ever again. Please, just give me.
Kathy was now on the verge of tears, begging for mercy. The desperation in her voice was palpable. But I wasn't moved by her pleas. She had hurt too many people, myself included. Her actions were not something that could be forgiven with a few tears and a quick apology. All right, I'll forgive you on one condition. If you do one thing for me, I won't seek revenge. What do you say? Kathy's eyes lit up with hope.
Really? What do I need to do?
I smiled at her and delivered my request. Apologize to me, right here, right now, in front of everyone. If you can do that, I'll let you off the hook. Kathy's face immediately fell.
What? Here? In front of everyone? You can't be serious. You want me to apologize in public? That's too much.
If you don't want to do it, that's fine. But don't expect me to forgive you. In fact, I'll make sure you regret it. Kathy gasped, realizing she had no choice. After a long pause, she knelt down and, with a shaking voice, muttered,
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Kathy's apology was barely audible, a pitiful whisper. I smiled at her, but I wasn't about to let her off that easily. I couldn't hear that. Speak up so everyone can hear you. Kathy's face turned pale. She clearly didn't want to do this in front of everyone in the restaurant, but she knew she had no choice. She swallowed her pride, tears welling up in her eyes, and raised her voice.
I'm really sorry. Please forgive me.
This time, her voice rang out louder, and heads turned in the restaurant as people began to notice the scene unfolding. Kathy was visibly shaking, her face bright red from embarrassment. But I wasn't satisfied yet. That's better, but you still haven't apologized for all the things you've done. Apologize properly, Kathy, for everything you've put me through. Kathy's eyes widened in disbelief. She looked like she wanted to run, but there was no escaping it. Her pride was already shattered, and now I was forcing her to admit her wrongdoings in public.
I'm sorry for everything. For all the horrible things I've said and done. Please, forgive me.
Her voice cracked as she struggled to get the words out, tears streaming down her face. The restaurant had fallen silent, with all eyes now on her. I had made her humiliate herself in front of everyone, and it felt like a small victory after everything she had put me through. Good. I hope you've learned your lesson, Kathy. This is what happens when you treat people poorly. Kathy didn't respond, her face still flushed with humiliation. She had nothing left to say, no more excuses to make. She had been forced to face the consequences of her actions, and for once, she couldn't talk her way out of it. Satisfied with her public apology, I finally stood up, ready to leave the restaurant. As I walked past Kathy, I spoke to her one last time. Remember, Kathy, I won't be part of your games anymore. From now on, you'll have to deal with the mess you've made. Kathy didn't reply, her hands covering her tear-streaked face. As I made my way to the door, I saw Robert still sitting at the table, completely defeated. He had watched the whole scene play out, unable to stop it. His once proud, domineering demeanor was now gone, replaced by shame and regret. It was almost pitiful to see him like this, but I felt no sympathy for him. Just as I was about to leave, Robert called out to me one last time.
Cora, please don't go. I'll change. I promise.
I turned to face him, but my resolve was firm. It's too late for that, Robert. I've given you enough chances. I'm done. With that, I walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind the chaos I had set in motion. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom. The weight of Robert and Kathy's mistreatment had been lifted from my shoulders. I was finally free from their toxic influence. In the following weeks, I followed through on my decision to divorce Robert. Despite his desperate attempts to convince me otherwise, I stayed firm. We went through divorce mediation, and eventually, it was finalized. I even managed to secure alimony from him, a small consolation for everything I had endured. As for Robert, his life fell apart after our divorce. His parents, who had witnessed his behavior firsthand at the restaurant, distanced themselves from him. He had no one left to support him, and from what I heard, he was now living a lonely, miserable life. Kathy didn't fare much better. Tom, my son, had found out about her behavior after the restaurant incident, and it didn't take long for him to file for divorce as well. Kathy fought it, but in the end, she couldn't avoid it. Tom won the divorce settlement and even demanded alimony from her. She returned to her rural hometown, working for her family's business, living a much less glamorous life than she had been used to. Occasionally, Tom would receive desperate messages from her, asking to reconcile, but he had long since moved on. As for me, I started living with Tom after the divorce, although he was often away for work, leaving me mostly on my own. But I didn't mind. I had my peace and independence, and after everything I had been through, I was finally content. Life after divorce wasn't easy, but it was better than staying in a toxic relationship. Breaking away from a long-term marriage required courage, but it was the right decision for my happiness. Now, I was free to live my life on my terms, without being weighed down by the selfishness of others. And so, I lived the rest of my days in peace, finally free from the shadows of my past. Thank you for watching this story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.